I've been summoned to the Council of Windrush Wargamers for some collabs. So I was invited to do a top 5 list discussion with friend of the channel Joe from Windrush Wargamers. Like most good intended technological forms of communication, we did have some issues.
I can see you.
Yeah, you still got the buffer.
Yeah. Very weird. I don't know, it just stopped working.
We're back.
Back. I'm blue.
Yeah, I was gonna say, dabba-dee-dabba-da.
It looks like I'm in a kind of 80s nightclub. I like it. I'll take it.
It was then time to get down to business.
We are going to list what we think from a hobbyist perspective is our favourite armies to do conversions to. So let's talk about the kind of criteria of what our heads were like going into it. I coined a term in my head, bashable. What's the most bashable army? Bashing the bishop, and I kind of just rated them on the bashing scale.
For top tiers, I go the more accessible they become, using easy to get or replace models you can't get anymore. Accessible, that's my buzzword.
Nice.
Got it.
That's accessibility.
Thank you, Tasmi, for writing that down.
You can watch the full discussion of our lists over on the Windrush Wargamers channel, link in the description to that. Now on to what this video is about.
I have got some of my examples in front of me, but I haven't done some of these. I haven't done myself. But,
Okay.
As I said, I haven't done all my entries, but I'm going to put my green stuff where my mouth is and convert some of them. Before I get any converting started, let's get out all the bits I can play with. With some MESBG Lord of the Ring minis, and an assortment of other GW models like Age of Sigmar, and some non-GW ones like Frostgrave and some unknown ones from eBay, along with some Warlord games, Spartans and Macedonians, and of course my little bitbox/tub.
we're still in the Gondorian kind of Minister with some fiefdoms.
Oh.
Because I know you've got some experience of that as well.
Over, yeah.
Yeah. But it's just, again, get that Minister soldier, good old standard, and just take away, add a bit of air from other miniatures. And you've got, I think the map's got, look at all that land, all those options. Some what are covered in the miniatures already, or just make your own up from what aren't represented. It's just the accessibility of having that base model to work from, add another helmet on it, and then you've got a fiefdom.
Starting off with the freedom of making my own fiefdom. I like the idea of having two-handed axes, and this having gambeson arms instead of plate would help differentiate from a Minister of Warrior, speaking of whom I'll be using one as the base. So this is the one guy on the sprue with both outstretched arms and with the shield detached from the main body. My plan is to keep the shoulder plate armour intact, and so with the pauldron secure and not too messed up, I gave him back his arms. Using green stuff for the upper arm, and after trimming it down, using the sculpting tools to shape them into somewhat beefy upper arms and then poking in the chainmail. And then realising I hadn't got rid of the tree on the chest plate. Rinse and repeat previous steps. It was then a search for the head. I settled on this Spartan one with the plume, which after some sanding off the hair details and some snipping and more sanding and filing, kind of looks like an axe, to go with a two-handed axe wieldingness. I then added his secondary weapon using 2 parts of the sheath sword from the Spartan sprue over the empty sheath of the Minister of Warrior. I then filled up the gap on the neck join with some green stuff long hair, and then used a tiny bit to fill the gap between the 2 parts of the sheath.
Another great thing as well is another staple of the army is the Dead Marsh Spectre. They're very handy. They're good in the meta, as far as I'm aware. I'm not a particularly competitive player, and the great thing about them is 2 great things really. The official models look good, but they're from the Last Alliance, so you could multiply them by getting a Last Alliance sprue or a Mordor Orc sprue and zombifying them, which could be quite quick and easy, but ultimately quite effective.
With this Dead Marsh Spectre, I'm really leaning into the quick. The plan is to combine this one-armed Last Alliance elf with this zombie dude. Snipping off the arms and reattaching the gangly weird-handed ones. Once the arms were solidly on, I got some green stuff to cover those joins and do some torn robes and marshiness. Also getting on a gauntlet on one of the arms to match the alive, not dead marshed elf and bring the zombie arm closer in with the original model.
What you can do is you take that kind of base model, the miniature, you give it an axe, suddenly you got a prowler. You give it a fur cape, suddenly it's a black shield, and I've done that. So I'll probably show a few. I need to update them, but I've got a few old conversions I did.
I had some previous Moria conversions to show during the discussion, but I haven't done the black shields yet. So out of my boxes I got some spiky helmet sword and shields, and I used some blue stuff for the first time. And after some trial and error and resetting the mould with hot water, I got the desired big Moria shield. Using green stuff to fill the mould and cast the big shields. The curved lighter green one didn't have pronounced enough spikes, so I cut them off, but without them it didn't look like a big enough black shieldy shield. The second mould though went much better. Then time to ball up some green and flatten it into a kind of cape shape. Using the tool to scrape in fur detail. Then with the cape furred up and flowy, I then glued on the green stuff shield.
I picked Survivors of Lake Town for this because any kind of horde army. Now, you're probably thinking this is an outlier. It's not evil and it's not got a unifying factor by their nature. They're kind of ragtag, but they're a horde army, and so that encourages kind of bashing either of the kind of the official models or bringing in lots of different models. So there's Perry Miniatures Russian peasants from the Napoleonic times. Just look just like them. If you change the weapon style to be a bit more Middle-earthy as opposed to Napoleonic, they fit, they match perfectly. Yeah, exactly, the fur-lined hats. There's another example is the Fireforge games. There's a peasant sprue or angry peasants or something. Peasant rabble, I think it's called, and they match perfectly as well.
So I don't have any of the examples Joe gave just there, but I do have these Frostgrave soldiers and a cultist who could pass as an angry butcher. I'm going with one of the soldiers, which are 28mm, so to match the 25mm MESBG scale, I'm combining the top half with the legs of a Lord of the Rings model. One of the Corsairs I randomly got from an eBay job lot. I went with this peasantry looking lantern holder for the upper half. Going back to the Spartan sprue for one of these heads with the rounded helmets, and then I added the green stuff to make it a fur hat. After gluing the two halves together, I filled in the gap round the back and sculpted in his little sash around his waist. There's a little gap round the front and I covered that in what kind of looks like a pouchy thing. Using the same green stuff sausage around and poke technique from the hat on his boots for the fur trim. A little side by side with a slightly bigger 28mm feet, using the Corsairs brings it in nicely with the 25mm. Then finally gluing on his head, and with that it's finished, plopping him on down into some green stuff on the base.
Arnor, because really, if you want an Arnor army, you're gonna have to go outside of GW, or spend a lot of money on eBay, if anyone's selling them. If you want that actual armor, bit of the tree, but kind of do a bit of editing because it's not really the tree, because that's more for Gondor, but you can still get that top shape armor. And my plan is, like, even though I haven't got the same kind of head shape, if I just put a little twist of that for a head, that would sell it, I think. Just a simple thing like that.
As I said, I'm starting off with a Minister of Warrior. This time remembering to file off the white tree iconography. Continuing with the file, I filed off the wing motifs on the helmet and rounded off the top of it. Last of the filing is making the shield plain. The Arnor warriors don't have the plate tassets, instead having chainmail and the skirt. So I snipped away at most of the tassets on the model and then sanded it down and green stuffed it. Using a little fiddly sausage and multiple attempts, I eventually got it round his helmet. The shields of Arnor have a different design embossed on their shields, so I recreated the centerpiece of the design onto the shield with green stuff, with the 7 stars to be painted on later, because I did attempt to put on the tiniest spot of green stuff, and it was too damn awkward and wouldn't have fitted them all on anyway. With some snipping and green stuffing, this Minister of Warrior has been transported ages back to Arnor. So those are my conversions. Thanks for having me on for some collabing, Joe, and of course, make sure to check out the full top 5 conversion army discussion over on this channel, and go and subscribe if you're not already. Now for some group montage shots. As always, like the video, helps a lot. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. What conversion have you done recently? Stuff like that, help the algorithm out. And of course, and as always, subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing here, if you like the channel, share it with any fellow hobbits or those who dwell in Middle Earth. See you on the next one.
It's quite cool.